Hello, everyone on YouTube and on Facebook. Welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. I hope everybody is doing well. All those in Klal Yisrael who need should have a refuah shalema b'kara Chuas Hashem karafayin. The Rebbeinu Shalom should bring the Yeshua to Klal Yisrael, not only a Yeshua from what's going on now, but the Rebbeinu Shalom should bring the Geula Krova very, very quickly. We should remember that by Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Galus got worse right before it got better. Moshe Rabbeinu came, and he went to Parai, and Parai said he's not giving the nation straw anymore. They had to go out, they had to collect their own straw to make bricks. So the Shibud actually got worse. The situation got worse before it got better. Then right away it got better. Maybe the Rebbeinu Shalom wants all of our tefillas, the Rebbeinu Shalom wants all of our heartfelt tefillas before bringing the Geula Shlema. The Geula Shlema should come immediately. We should be Zeichem. Everybody's Pesach plans are up in the air. Maybe we'll all be in Eretz Yisrael for Pesach with the Beis Hamikdash. Halavai. The Schus HaTorah should be Megan on Gans Klal Yisrael. So let's go back into the Mishnah Berurah. We're holding on Nun Daled Amud Aleph, and we're in Siman Tuf Nun Zayin, and we're speaking about being mafresh challah from the isa, from the dough for the matzahs. So yesterday, what the Mechaber told us was, we had said in the previous Siman that when you make your dough for the matzah, we don't want you to make a large dough. We want you to make a relatively small dough. Being that that's the case, it's very possible that you will have a dough that's less than the sheer challah. Therefore, the Mechaber said, let's say you make a bunch of doughs. We're afraid you might have a dough there that's not chayiv and challah. So what you should do is you should take all of your doughs, all of your individual doughs, and you should bring them close to each other. You should touch them to each other so that you combine them, and now you'll definitely have a sheer challah in everything, because now the whole dough is considered to be one, and then you'll be mafresh challah from that dough. That's what the Mishnah Berurah told us yesterday. Now, let's take a look what the Mechaber says now. We're holding in the middle of Seif Aleph over here. In my Mishnah Berurah, it's 2 lines from the bottom, almost at the middle of the line. The Mechaber says, if it is not possible for you to be mafresh the challah from the dough before you do the baking, why would this not be possible? Mipnei hamihirus, because we all know that in the matzah bakery, everything is being done with great alacrity, everything is being done with great speed, and if we're going to have to interrupt the process in order to be mafresh challah, we're using up precious time. Let's remember, we really only have 18 minutes from the time that the water goes into the kamach until we want the matzah in the oven baked. Baking means that it's karmu paneha, that the surface of the matzah already forms a skin. So we only have 18 minutes from the time the water goes into the kamach until then. We don't want to have to interrupt the process for our frashas challah. And that's what the Mechaber means here when the Mechaber says, let's say it's not possible to be mafresh challah when the dough is still dough because of the speed with which you need to bake the matzah. So then what should you do? Yafrishena achar afia miyad. You should be mafresh challah from the matzahs immediately after you do the baking. Now, let's just keep track of what's going on over here. We still have the same problem that we had yesterday. You made multiple doughs. Let's say you made 3 doughs. We're afraid that at least one of those doughs might not have a sheer challah. So yesterday the Mechaber said, take all 3 doughs while they're dough, stick them all together. Now you definitely have a sheer challah because now it's looked at as being one dough, and be mafresh. Now the Mechaber is telling me, let's say you can't do this while it's dough because you don't want to interrupt the baking process. So then what you should do is you should be mafresh challah right after the baking. Now, you took the doughs, you broke them up into little pieces, you made matzah. Now, how are you going to combine all of those matzahs to make sure that you have a sheer challah? So what you're going to do is, says the Mechaber, sheyitain kol hamatzos bisal. You'll take all of the matzahs that you just baked and you'll put them into a basket. V'asal mitzarfam lechallah. And now the basket will be mitzaref all of the matzahs by virtue that you're putting all of these matzahs into one basket. Now the basket combines all of the matzahs, and now we have a sheer challah. Even though these matzahs came from individual separate doughs, and at least one of those doughs might not have had a sheer challah, it doesn't matter. Now that you take all of this matzah and you combine all of this matzah into a basket, now we look at it as one thing. The basket is mitzaref everything together. We have a sheer challah, and you'll take challah from that basket. You'll be mafresh challah, and now you accomplished combining all the doughs after the baking and being mafresh challah for everything. And the Mechaber says, "V'zehu haderech hayoser nachain," and the Mechaber says that indeed this is the best way to do it. It's better to do it this way than to do what he said originally, than to interrupt the baking process to go mimafresh challah from the dough. Better bake all of your matzahs, combine all of the matzahs in one basket, and be mafresh challah from the basket. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois cotton hay. Ve'emi efsher, if it's not possible for you to go ahead and take the challah from the dough. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the im efsher, because technically speaking, if it is possible for you to be mafresh the challah from the dough, tov yoser lahafresh mina isa. Halachically, it is preferable to be mafresh challah from the dough. Kidiksiv, like the pasuk says, reishes arisai seichem. The challah is supposed to be the first from your dough. Arisai seichem is your dough. So, literally in the pasuk, you see it's supposed to be mafresh challah from dough, not from challah. So, technically speaking, harei de ikar mitzvah salachatchilahu b'shashe isa dayin. The ikar mitzvah of hafrashas challah is to be mafresh challah from dough, not from baked goods. Now, the Mechaber did say that if you didn't do it from the dough, you should do it from the baked matzahs, and the Mechaber said, "V'zehu aderech hayoser nachain." And I believe the reason is because even though in the context of Hilchas Challah, it is preferable to be mafresh challah from the dough rather than from the final baked goods, over here by matzah, we have this additional issue of potential chimutz. So we don't want to interrupt. We have a special reason here why we don't want to interrupt the baking process and use up precious minutes. So in the case of matzah, the derech nachain is to wait until after it's baked and to be mafresh from when it's baked. Ois cotton vav. The Mechaber, very precise with his words. The Mechaber said, "Achar afia miyad." If you weren't mafresh challah when it was dough, you should be mafresh challah miyad, immediately after the baking. Now, the Mishnah Berurah, the Chavetz Chaim, points out an interesting issue with this. The Chavetz Chaim points out that there is a halacha in challah by chalas chutz la'aretz. Challah outside Eretz Yisrael, there's only a chiyuv of challah midrabanan in chutz la'aretz. The chiyuv d'araisa is in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore there's a kula in chalas chutz la'aretz. This is a kula I don't think most people know, and that is that chalas chutz la'aretz, we're not noyig this way, but technically speaking, there's a kula in chalas chutz la'aretz that you could make a dough, you could bake your challah, and you could eat from the challah before you're mafresh the challah, on the smach, relying on the fact that you are going to be mafresh challah before you eat up all of what you baked. So you could mix up a batch of challah, bake 6 challahs, and you could eat 1 challah, eat 2 challahs, and you know that you're going to leave at the end some, and from that sum that you leave, you're going to be mafresh challah on everything. So, because of this kula, now we're not noyig this way. The Shulchan Aruch Harav writes very clearly that we're not noyig with this kula of chalos chutz la'aretz, and I believe he says that we're not noyig that way. He says we're not noyig that way already midoros rishonim from previous generations. We're not noyig this way because of the chash, because of the potential risk that maybe you'll end up not being mafresh. So we're not noyig with this kula. However, this kula does exist, and therefore the Chavetz Chaim writes a nice cotton vav. The Mechaber said, "Achar afia miyad." You should separate the challah immediately after the baking. Va'af b'chalas chutz la'aretz came. Chavetz Chaim says, even in chutz la'aretz, even by chalas chutz la'aretz, you should be makpid to be mafresh the challah immediately. Va'afal gav de bechalas chutz la'aretz kaimalon the oicha v'hoylech u'meshayir k'tzas l'chala. Even though by chalas chutz la'aretz, which is only a chiyuv d'Rabbanan, we paskin that really you could eat before the hafrasha, leave over some at the end, and then you'll be mafresh chala at the end because it's only midrabanan. Hainu beisa achas gedola. That's true when you made one large dough that had a chiyuv of chala. Afal gav sheneschalka achar kach lekama kikaros. Let's say you went ahead and you baked challah, and you baked challah out of 6 pounds of flour. So you definitely have a chiyuv challah here. And you didn't make 1 6-pound suda challah. You made 6 challahs out of your 6-pound dough. So even though you went ahead and you divided it up into different loaves, still you're allowed to eat from those loaves before your mafresh challah, and you can leave over some challah at the end and be mafresh from that leftover piece on the entire batch, even on the stuff that you ate already. In that scenario, since all of the challahs originally came from one dough, hey, kelu b'chutz la'aretz, there's a kula, there's a leniency in chutz la'aretz, deloy ba'inan mukaf u'mechuber b'shas hafrosha, that you do not need mukaf, you do not need the challah that you're being mafresh on all to be in front of you. The word mukaf literally means surrounded, but this word mukaf in the context of Hilchas Challah doesn't literally mean surrounded, because we're going to see that you could accomplish mukaf even by all the challah being in one house. It's considered mukaf. So the way I'm going to translate mukaf over here, we're using the word mukaf over here, that the challah has to be in front of you. So far what the Mishnah Berurah said over here is like this. Really, by chalas chutz la'aretz, there's a kula that you could eat some of the challah that you baked before you are mafresh challah, and you could be mafresh challah at the end by leaving some over and being mafresh from that. And when you're mafresh from that leftover piece, it covers everything that came from that dough, even what you ate already. Now, what you ate already is zikr not mukaf. It's not in front of you anymore. You ate it. It's gone. So how does this hafrashas challah that you do at the end cover what you already ate? The answer is that when everything comes from one dough, you don't need mukaf anymore. When you're mafresh at the end, it covers even what's not in front of you. But that's not true in our scenario over here, what the Mechaber spoke about in Hilchas Challah. Masha'en ken kan, shehem me'isais b'chulakos. Over here in the case of the Mechaber, what happened? You were in the matzah bakery. You made 5 doughs. Now, in the first case of the Mechaber told you take the 5 doughs, stick them together, and be mafresh from the dough. In the second case, the Mechaber told you, you have 5 individual doughs. Go ahead, bake matzahs, and now at the end, after the matzahs are baked, take all the matzahs, put them into one basket, into a sal. The sal will combine them all and be mafresh from that sal. Take off one piece of challah to cover everything in the basket. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why do you have to do that? It's chalas chutz la'aretz. Why can't you eat from the sal and then be mafresh challah at the end? Why do you have to be mafresh challah right away? So he's explaining to you the reason is because when do you have this kula that you could be mafresh at the end? That's when everything came from one dough. But in our scenario, it didn't all come from one dough. It came from 5 doughs. In this sal, in this basket that you have in front of you, you now have matzah that came from 5 different doughs. Now you need mukaf. Now, if you want to be able to be mafresh from one piece of matzah in this basket on 5 different doughs, the piece of challah that you're taking, you're going to break off a piece of matzah and you're going to say, Arezu challah. That came from one of the 5 doughs. But you want to cover hafrashas challah on all 5 doughs. In order to do that, the kula of chalas chutz la'aretz doesn't apply. Now you need mukaf. Now you need everything to be in front of you. So you can't eat any of it before you're being mafresh challah because then it's not in front of you. Why do you need everything to be in front of you? Because since it came from 5 different doughs, if something is not in front of you, then your hafrashas challah that might have come from dough 1 cannot cover matzah that came from dough 2 unless it's in front of you. And if you ate it, it's not in front of you. Okay. Even though you combined the matzah that came from all of these 5 doughs in one basket, by putting the matzahs into one basket, yes, you combine them, so now you could do one hafrashas challah on all 5 doughs, but it does not combine it the same way as when you stick the doughs together, or when it comes from one dough. When it came from one dough, you could be mafresh even on stuff that's not here. But if it came from 5 different doughs, you can't be mafresh on stuff that's not here. It's not considered combined to the extent that you should be able to eat from it before your mafresh challah and say that your hafrashas challah covers even what's not here. This is true even if your 5 doughs, even if you know for a fact that each one of those 5 doughs was large enough to have its own chiyuv challah. Still, you have to be mafresh the challah right away, and they all have to be in front of you. Still, if you want to do one hafrasha, everything has to be mukaf, everything has to be in front of you when you do the hafrashas challah, kevan she'ena me'isa achas, since it did not originally come from one dough. And again, what's at work over here is, yes, it's true, each one of these 5 doughs had its own independent chiyuv challah, and you do not need to combine the 5 doughs in order to get a chiyuv challah on all of the doughs. Everything is chayav challah because every individual dough was large enough to be chayav challah. But still, in order to be mafresh, in order to do one hafrashas challah from one of the doughs, right? You're going to take the baked matzahs that came from all 5 doughs. You're going to pick up one matzah, break off a piece, and say arezu challah. So you're being mafresh from one matzah from one dough, and you want to cover all 5 doughs. In order to do that, you need mukaf. So you can't eat from it anything first before you're mafresh challah, because then it's not mukaf. Ukamasha kasav biyardei siman shin chav gimel sif aleph behaga. Excuse me. Okay, so the Mechaber said, you're being mafresh challah here after you bake the challah. What are you going to do? On the bottom line, the Mechaber said, you're going to put all of your bakes in nothing. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut and zayin, besal. You're putting all of the challah into a sal. Now, again, I want to remind you, in the scenario that the Mechaber is addressing, he's worried that you have the potential problem where one of your 5 doughs, I'm just using the number 5, might not have had a chiyuv challah, right? We're making small doughs. So his worry is one of those doughs might not have had a sheer challah. And therefore, you're putting everything into one basket to be mitzaref everything so that there should be a sheer challah in everything. Because of this, says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and zayin, besal, you're putting all the matzahs together in a basket. Ve'im sal gadol, if the basket is a very large basket, sarich lekarvam sheyigu zeh bazeh. You have to put the matzahs together so that the matzahs should touch each other. Now, the reason for this is because, again, in the Mechaber scenario, maybe dough number 2 was not large enough for a chiyuv challah. So you need to combine all of the matzahs that came from dough number 2 together with the matzahs that came from dough number 1, dough number 3, dough number 4, dough number 5, so that you know that there's a chiyuv challah in that dough. So what you're doing over here is, I just see that my web thing slowed down here. Looks like it's speeding up again. Okay, I don't want to lose everybody. Okay, so what you're doing over here is you're being mitzaref all of the matzahs together. You're combining all of the matzahs together to make sure that you have a sheer challah. That's why it's not enough to just go ahead and put the matzahs into a basket. You have to make sure that the matzahs are touching each other in the basket, so that they truly combine to give you the sheer challah. However, the Mishnah Berurah continues, Achein, im yesh b'chol iser isa sheer challah. Let's say doughs number 1 through 5, you know that they were large enough to have a shir challah. So now you're not trying to combine them for a shir challah. Now the only reason you're combining them into the basket really is because you want to be able to do one hafrasha on everything. Okay, im yesh b'chol isa shir challah, if each one of the individual doughs was large enough to have a shir challah, where we're going to see momentarily that the Ramah says in that scenario, the ain't tzarich tziruf sal. So then you don't need the basket to combine the matzahs in order to gain a chiyuv challah. A chiyuv challah you have. You're not using the basket to combine to make a chiyuv challah. All you're doing with the basket is you're trying to combine everything so you can do one hafrasha. Huadin negia lahadadi loy tzarich. So then you also would not have to have the matzahs touching each other. Bein kishehem munachim besal, whether the matzahs are sitting together in a basket, bein kishehem munachim babayis, or even if they're not together in a basket, they're sitting on a table, but just they happen to be in the same house. The habayis mitzarfan, because the house combines them to the extent the yachal hafrish mizeh al zeh, so that you should be able to do one hafrasha and cover all 5 doughs. So again, I just want to explain this so everybody has this clear. There's 2 different levels of tziruf. There's 2 different levels of combining that we're trying to accomplish over here. Sometimes we're trying to combine matzahs because we're afraid that some of the matzahs came from an isa, came from a dough that wasn't large enough to have a shir challah. In that case, we need to combine those matzahs together with the matzahs that came from the other doughs so that they should have a chiyuv challah. In that case, you need serious tziruf. You need a serious level of combination, what we call tziruf tzal. And for tziruf tzal, you have to put them in a basket and they should be touching each other. But then there's a different level of tziruf, and that is we know everything in here is chayiv and challah. We're just trying to combine them because we want to do one hafrasha, and our hafrasha is going to come only from one of the doughs, and we want to cover all of the doughs with that hafrasha. For that, you need a lower level of tziruf. All you need is what's called mukaf, which I said before is called that it's in front of you. On that, the Mishnah Berurah says, we paskin, you can have even tziruf habayis, even if it's all together in one house. That's also called mukaf. So technically speaking, in that case, it doesn't have to be in one basket. It doesn't have to be all in front of us. It's on a table in the house. Now, ben kishay munachim babayis, habayis b'tzarfan v'yachal hafrish mizal zeh. However, here's a caveat, and this affects what we do in the matzah bakeries. This, that if they're in the same house, it's considered mukaf, and now you could do hafrasha from one on everything. That's kishehe munachim b'loy kelim. That's if the matzahs are not in individual vessels. Aval imhe munachim b'kelim. But if you have matzahs that are in different boxes, in different kelim, tzarich l'karev hakelim lahadadi, then the kelim have to be touching each other. So to be clear, you have matzahs that came from 5 different doughs. Let's say all the matzahs are laying on a table. If all the matzahs are laying on a table, you could do one hafrasha from something that came. So you made 5 batches of challah. You made 5 challah doughs. And now you want to do one hafrasha. You don't want to be mafresh, do hafrasha from this dough, from that dough, from this dough, from that dough. You want to do one hafrasha from one dough, and you want to cover everything. Very simple. Take all 5 doughs, put them all out on the counter. So you have them out on the kitchen counter in front of you. One is here, one is here, one is here, one is here. That's mukaf. Now, I'm assuming each one of your doughs had a shir challah. So you're not combining them for a shir challah. You're only combining them so that you could do a hafrasha from one dough and cover all the doughs. So you put each dough on the counter in front of you. Guess what? That's called mukaf. They're all in the same house. They're all on the same countertop over here. They're all in front of you. That's mukaf. Now, let's say you have 5 doughs, but they're each in a bowl. Now that's a different story. Now, because they're each contained in a separate bowl, hekaf habayis doesn't help. Now you can't be mafresh from one on all 5. If you want to be mafresh for one on all five, you got to push all five bowls together so that the five bowls are touching each other. If the five bowls are touching each other, now you can be mafresh from one on the others. Now again, we're assuming that they all had a share challah. So it continues the Mishnah Berurah. Avol imhei munachim bekalim. If the individual doughs or the matzahs that came from the individual doughs are in separate kalim, tzarich lekarav hakelim lahadadi. You have to touch the kalim to each other. V'yiyu psuchim lamayla. And these kalim, the bowls that the doughs are in, should be opened on top. Dimheim stumim. If each dough is in a closed vessel, somehow you put the doughs in closed containers, then even if the kalim are touching each other, you can't be mafresh from one on the others. They're totally separate. Now, another caveat. This is only true if each one of those doughs had a chiyuv kala, was large enough to be a chiyuv kala. If you have some doughs over there that aren't large enough to have a shir challah, so you want to combine that small dough together with another dough to gain a chiyuv challah, utzrichen l'tziruf, now you need serious combination. Now you need a higher level of tziruf to give you a shir challah. Ein lahakel av she'akelim psuchim umukuravim lahadadi. So let's say you're baking at home. And you made a 6-pound batch of challah. And then you made another 6-pound batch of challah. And now you made a 2-pound batch of cocoa dough. And you want to go ahead and you want to do afrashas challah with a bracha on everything. So you have this small dough. This small dough doesn't have a chiyuv challah. Now you want to combine this small dough together with the other doughs to gain a chiyuv challah. Oh, now that's different. Says the Mishnah Berurah here, the cholzek kishiyesh b'chalisa sher challah. When could you take your bowls and put them next to each other and leave them opened on top and combine them all to do one afrasha on the rest? That's only if each one had a shir challah. But if one of those doughs didn't have a shir challah and you want to combine it with the other doughs to gain a shir challah, ein lahakel, then you can't be lenient. Even though the kalim are opened and they're touching each other. What do you have to do in this case? Either you have to take the doughs and put them into one keli to combine them, and I guess they would also have to be touching inside the keli. The doughs would have to be touching. Or, like we said earlier, the matzahs would have to be touching. Or you could put the kalim next to each other and then cover them with one dowel, with one mappa. The ayin bir halacha, with the bir halacha on the previous page, goes through the technicalities of the mappa and covering. Okay, so a little complex, but I think if you want to generate the rules from what we just said was that there's different levels of tziruf. There's one level of tziruf if you want to combine those to get a shir challah. For that, you need them to be in one sal, or they could be in separate kalim, but the kalim have to be touching each other and they have to be covered. So that you need a higher level of tziruf. If you already have a shir challah, and the tziruf that you're looking for is just that you want to do one afrasha to cover everything, then you need mukaf, which means it has to be in front of you. How do you gain mukaf? So if the doughs or the baked goods that came from the individual doughs are not enclosed in kalim, let's say they're out on the table, so then you could have hekef habayis. They're in the same house. It's considered mukaf. If they're in individual kalim, then the kalim have to be touching each other. Okay. I mean, I know that in the matzah bakery by me, so what happens? Each dough is less than a shir challah. Each dough is the individual myris that they make. The individual doughs don't have a shir challah. All the matzahs go out. The matzahs are baked. Now on the table where the ladies are rolling the dough, over here on the table you have a shir challah at one time, but it's a suffix whether or not the table is mitzaref for a shir challah. All right, the matzahs go in the oven. The matzahs come out of the oven. The baked matzahs go into a basket. A full basket has a shir challah. So once the matzahs go into that, I'm sorry, just keep it up. Hey, this is my mother. I missed her. Okay. Once the matzahs go together into a basket, the basket is mitzaref all of those matzahs together, and now you have a shir challah. Now, we're not mafresh challah until the baskets come upstairs to the checking room. Usually 5 baskets come up at one time. You usually have 4 full baskets and 1 basket that might not be completely full. Sometimes it could happen that 5th basket doesn't have a shir challah. So those baskets come upstairs. What do? So we just said, if you have a shir challah and everything, so let's say the 4 full baskets, each one of those baskets has a shir challah. If you want to be mafresh from 1 basket on all 4 baskets, what do you need? You need mukaf, but they're in separate baskets. So in order to gain mukaf on 4 separate baskets, what do you have to do? It's not enough to say hekef habayis because they're in baskets. So you have to take the 4 baskets and push them that they should be touching each other. Once the 4 baskets are touching each other, you have mukaf. Now that you have mukaf, so you could, without covering it, without anything, you could go to 1 basket and take a piece, make the bracha, be mafresh challah, harezu challah, and you are mafresh challah on all 4 baskets. Even though those matzahs all came from different doughs, even though they're in different baskets, doesn't matter. You have mukaf, and you have a shir challah. Each basket is its own shir challah. Now let's throw the 5th basket into the mix. So now we have the 5th basket where I said it's possible that 5th basket might not have a shir challah in it. Oh, so now what do you need to do? Now, when did the matzahs in that basket get a chiyuv challah? We don't even know if they all came from the same dough. It's very possible that they didn't all come from the same dough. But even if they came from the same dough, each dough doesn't have a chiyuv challah. On the table, when the ladies were rolling, that's a suffix if that's mitzaref them to a shir challah. So when do we know for a fact that those 10 matzahs in that 5th basket got a chiyuv challah? We don't know. So we want to be machmir. We want to be sure that they have a chiyuv challah. So we want to combine them with the matzahs in the other baskets. So what do? We take all 5 baskets. We push them next to each other so they're touching. But wait a second. We said that that's not enough of a tziruf to give you a chiyuv challah. It's enough of a tziruf so that your hafrosha on 1 covers everything. But still, we need those 5 matzahs to get a chiyuv challah. So, okay. So over there, we do what the Mishnah Berurah said over here. The Mishnah Berurah said, Elim kemanicham b'sayis alechad, oishi yechas aleim b'mapa. So you could cover them up. So what we do is we take all 5 baskets, push them together so that they're touching each other, and then we take a large cover and we put a cover over all 5 baskets. So now we have all 5 baskets touching each other and 1 cover covering everything. Now we know that everything has a chiyuv challah and everything is mukaf. So now we do afrasha from 1 place in 1 basket and we cover everything. That's how we're noig in the matzah bakery. Okay, let's try to push a little bit further over here. I don't want to fall more behind. You're going by the dishes schedule, which I think we're already a month behind. But it's delicious because we're doing Hilchas Pesach. Baruch Hashem. We should all be zeichel. We should have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Simcha Dika Pesach. Rabbi Hashem should bring Simcha to everybody. Rabbi Hashem should be makabel all of our tefillas. The Rabbi Hashem loves our tefillas, and the Rabbi Hashem is generating tefillas. Rabbi Hashem should be makabel the tefillas. Says the Ramah on the top of Nun Daled Amud Beis. I go. Let's say you're baking your matzah and you had a shir challah. So your dough had a shir challah. You forgot to be mafresh challah. Yafresh achar. So you'll be mafresh the challah afterwards. Va'afilu tziruf sal lo tzarich. And like we just explained at length, if you made 3 doughs and each one had a shir challah, okay, you weren't mafresh challah, so you'll be mafresh challah afterwards after you bake the matzahs. And over here, you don't even need sir of sal. You don't have to make sure that the matzahs from dough 1, the matzahs from dough 2, and the matzahs from dough 3 all got together in a basket. No need. Everything had a chiyuv challah when it was dough. So now it doesn't matter where the baked matzahs are. You prepared 3 doughs. Each one of them had a chiyuv challah. They went on the table, they got rolled out, they went in the oven, they got baked, they came out. Now they're laying scattered on a table. You don't have to put them in a sal. What's the problem? You'll be mafresh challah from one matzah on everything. You have hekaf habayis. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut ches. The shachach lahafresh. You forgot to be mafresh challah when it was dough. Ritzainer loymar. What the Ramah means to say is ba'oida isa. You forgot to be mafresh challah while it was dough. And the Ramah says v'shachach lahafresh. You forgot to. The implication is that really you should have been mafresh when it was dough. Says the Chavetz Chaim, the lechatchila nachon yaisa lahafresh min ha'isa look at the el b'sif cotton hay. Like I told you earlier in Sif cotton hay. Really, the ikar mitzvah of challah is to be mafresh when it's dough. I assume that the Ramah was addressing a case of either one person baking his own matzah or a very, very small operation where they weren't worried about slowing down the baking process. So, lechatchila be mafresh when it's dough. You forgot to be mafresh when it's dough, so now you're going to be mafresh after the baking. Ice cotton test, achakach, after it's baked. Ice cotton yud. Now you don't have to put all the matzahs into one sal. You don't need sir sal in order to gain a chiyuv challah because you have a chiyuv challah. The doughs were big enough to give you a chiyuv challah. Kevin sheyesh b'chalachas kishir because each dough had a shir challah. So you can lahafresh mi matzah sisa achas alakol. So you can be mafresh challah from one dough, from one matzah that came from one dough on everything. Barak b'inon sheyeh hakol munach lefanav babayis. All you need is mukaf. And for mukaf, we said as long as it's all in the same house, as long as it's not in separate kalim. But if it's all in one house, laying on a table, fine, no problem. Let's say you only made one dough. Even though that dough was now baked into a lot of individual matzahs, since it all came from one dough that was kneaded together, then you don't even need mukaf. If you only had one dough and you baked 60 matzahs, that's too big, that's 10 pounds. 6 matzahs to a pound, 30 matzahs. That's 35 matzahs to make sure. So you baked 35 matzahs out of this dough. This dough definitely had a shir challah. And you baked 35 matzahs. Right? Now, you don't even need mukaf. Why don't you need mukaf? Because of what we said at the beginning of the share in Mishnah Berurah Ice Cotton Vav. The kula of chalas chutz la'aretz. The kula of chalas chutz la'aretz is when everything came from one dough, you want to be mafresh from one part on everything else. You don't even need mukaf. You don't need mukaf. We said you're even allowed to eat from the baked goods before you're mafresh challah. Just leave over at the end and be mafresh at the end on everything, because everything came from one dough. That's why the Mishnah Berurah says over here, if it all came from one dough, even though you baked many matzahs from it, since it was all kneaded into one dough at the outset, now you could be mafresh from one matzah and everything else without mukaf. You don't need it to be all in front of you. We're going to stop over here because now the Mishnah Berurah launches into a different topic, and it's an interesting topic, but we're already, I see, 38 minutes into the share, so we're going to stop over here. Rabbi Shalom should send Yeshuas and Refuas. Everybody should have Gesund. Everyone should have Nachas. We should all make sure that we come out on the other side of this uplifted spiritually with a greater appreciation for Ben Adam L'Chaveroi. Rabbi Shalom is separating us from everybody. We should have a heightened appreciation for what it means to be together with our fellow Yidden. We should have a heightened appreciation and sensitivity and caring for other people. We should have a heightened sensitivity and appreciation for tefillah. We should have a heightened and increased appreciation for Amen Yeheshpei Rabbah, for Kedusha, for Kriyas HaTorah, for everything that we take for granted, for being able to see each other in the room by shir instead of having to do these kind of shiurim. And the Mesiras Nefesh that people are showing for mitzvahs and for Torah should stand us in good stead. The Chos HaTorah should stand us in good stead. Hashem Yerachem al Amai, the Rabban Shalom Shav Rachmanus on Gans Klal Yisrael. He should be Megan. Gans Klal Yisrael should bring the Geula Shlema B'Karev. Everybody should be well. Thank you so much for learning Torah with me. Be well.